Hello everybody, welcome to the Trust for Sustainable Living's webinar today to tell you more about the RISE Challenge. I'm Kirsty Shakespeare, the International for Sustainable Development Education Manager at the Trust for Sustainable Living, and we're going to be talking to you today more to learn about the RISE Challenge. And we're also delighted to welcome Saoirse Exton, who is one of the RISE Global winners, who's going to be sharing her insights as well. So welcome, Saoirse. Would you like to introduce us and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Saoirse. I'm 18 and I'm from Ireland. I initially started out. I'm a climate activist, so that's where the majority of my work kind of goes on. So I initially started out in 2019, with Fridays for Future, which is a global movement where young people, striked from school every Friday. I participated in that in my local city. And basically the aim of it was to say, why should we go to school when we might not even have a future? And so I did that for a couple of years, and I'm still very much involved, but more so on the legislative side of things. And anyway, from there I went into the Irish Second Level Students' Union. So I worked directly with I represented young people and students across Ireland, and I was a quality officer. So I think for me it was a different kind of scope, but at the same time very much interconnected with the climate crisis through concepts like climate justice. And so it also introduced me to that legislative world I was talking about before, and I think it showed me that action has to come both from within the system and from without it. That makes sense. We need to have, the pressure from the outside while also the pressure from the inside. And most recently, I was selected to the UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change as a representative for Western Europe. And that has also been a very different experience, very much more kind of legislative, as I mentioned, but on a very different level than anything I've kind of dealt with before. Dealing with the UN and intergovernmental kind of climate delegations and ministries. COP28, which is the COPs are basically the biggest climate conferences that happen each year, where leaders are gathered together in the one place, is happening right now. I'm going to be going for week 2, but definitely a lot of new experiences. And then obviously as a RISE Global winner, that's been a big part of my life as well in the last couple of years. I was selected in the inaugural year in 2021, and my project was researching ancient Irish myths and rewriting them. And the idea was that Irish myths were originally orally passed down, but then when Christianity arrived in Ireland, they were written down for the first time, and they were changed a lot. And then as the years went by and as we lost our Irish language, increasingly because of colonization from the British, we also lost the stories. And so the stories that we have now, they're very much changed to fit very colonial ideas of gender and sexuality and even identity in general, or even the relationship with nature. And so I wanted to return that to the stories, to bring back this element of storytelling and this element of actually reflecting perhaps what my ancestors might have believed, and so one of the ways in which I did this was through highlighting female characters who have often been left out of stories, or at least their stories haven't been told, even when they're recorded. So yeah, that's me.
Great, thanks also for introducing yourself there. So I've got a presentation to share with you, so I'll just pull my screen up. Oh, hang on, I've got multiple screens. Let me make sure I get the right one open. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, let's go with that one. Okay. Okay, can everybody see that? Let's go into present. Yeah, can everybody see that slide?
Yes.
Fabulous, thank you. Okay, so you're all here to learn a little bit more about the RISE Challenge and the RISE programme. So hopefully we'll be able to answer most of your questions, but again, if you've got any questions, you're welcome to share those with both of us at the end of the session. I cannot see my presenter notes. Where have they gone? There we go. Hopefully you can't see those. Excellent. Okay, so what is RISE? So for those of you who've not heard, RISE is a programme which selects amazing and finds promising young people from around the world as they provide opportunities as they work to serve others. Okay. It's a joint initiative of the Schmidt Futures and Rhodes Trust at the University of Oxford. So Schmidt Futures is the philanthropic vehicle of Eric and Wendy Schmidt. RISE is an anchor programme of their $1 billion philanthropic commitment to identify and support global talent. Okay. RISE believes that the world's most important problems will be solved by the next generation of leaders. We know from history alone that one person can change the world. And at RISE, they're building a network of exceptional people who will make a positive impact together throughout their lives. And that is the vision of the RISE programme. So the Trust for Sustainable Living are delighted to be partnering with RISE this year. As many of you on the call know, we work to support young people and educators around the world to support a more sustainable future by empowering young people and raising their voices and supporting through educational sustainability related activities. So we saw a real synergy with the work that RISE are doing in supporting young people in creating new opportunities for them, and then providing lifelong support for those young people that really are exceptional and want to make a difference in the world, like Saoirse, who are going to share their voices, who are going to make change, and who are eventually going to lead us to a more sustainable future, but more just futures and more futures thinking about different elements as well. So we're delighted to be partnering with RISE. And some of you may remember Vanisha Umashankar, who was one of our student debaters a few years ago. She was announced as one of the RISE Challenge winners for this year as well. So we know that the students that we work with and the teachers that we work with have got students that are very much what RISE is looking for. So what does RISE offer? So RISE offers a variety of benefits for everyone who applies and also for the RISE global winners. They create a global community. Since RISE's inception, and the programme has got over 100 finalists now from over 90 countries. RISE offers benefits to everybody who applies. Upskilling begins at the beginning when youth begin the application process and grows as candidates advance through the selection process. So for example, applicants learn about project-based learning, which is a tangible approach that they can then use throughout their education and into their careers. They look for talent in innovative ways, whatever form it takes, wherever it is in the world, from high school classrooms to refugee camps to science fairs. RISE believes that talent is equally distributed and opportunity is not. So RISE is on a mission to change the odds for the world's most exceptional people from a young age and throughout their lives. Unlike your traditional application process, RISE uses videos, projects, group interviews, and gives multiple opportunities to showcase their potential. RISE assesses applicants on their talents rather than their academic grades or test scores, and it's completely free of charge to apply. So, Saoirse, can you tell us why RISE stood out to you?
Yeah, I think the application process was a big thing for me. I'd never really seen something that was so thorough and so multifaceted. And also I like just talking into a camera. So I think for me it was both because it suited me, and also I just had never really done anything like that. And then eventually, as I went through, the program, and seeing how long it was and seeing how not intense necessarily, but it requires a certain level of commitment. And I think I just was blown away by the application process. I think it was really, really cool. And at the end of the day, even when I was a finalist, I was like, if I don't win, I have this brilliant experience. I have this ability to speak with clarity. And even now, I'm applying to the UK at the moment, and I have an interview coming up for a university, and I know that the skills that I honed through the RISE application will probably help me in this interview, being able to speak on the spot about something that, I'm really passionate about. So I think definitely that was part of it. But also the idea of a community as well. I'm constantly searching for communities, and I think also, something we don't recognize is that a lot of activist movements or different groups can be quite insular. It can be people who are interested in a certain aspect of a social issue. But I think the brilliant thing about RISE, or one of the great things about it, is that you can network with people who, you know, work on AI. I don't think I would have known anyone who did anything to do with AI if it wasn't for this, for example. And you can, even if you have project ideas, you can share that. And I think even before I applied, I had a kind of I had a knowledge that that would be the case if I was to end up winning. Just having discussions with people who have completely different worldviews, completely different experiences. They've grown up in every single possible walk of life. And just talking to people and finding common experiences and finding those differences, you know, at the summit, for example, that happens for every year of winners. It was an incredible experience. So I think those are probably the things for me.
Great, thank you. And that idea that you mentioned of the global community is something that really resonates with the Trust for Sustainable Living and the teachers and students that we work with. So that's one of the reasons that we were really attracted to partner with RISE on this, is to have access to that global community so you can connect with other young people, with other teachers anywhere around the world who are having similar experiences or very different experiences, and have that opportunity to share and learn more and not feel perhaps so alone or so isolated in your thoughts or your bubble of sustainability or whatever it is that you're passionate about. So great. So RISE, Schmidt Futures and the Rhodes Trust have a vast global network of people, organisations and partners that are dedicated to serving others in this global community. So we believe that having a global network is critical to shaping people's lives and allows them to make connections that amplify their impact. By joining the RISE network, you'll have the opportunity to connect with experts and leaders from across the globe within the network. So since its inception, there's been 300 winners from over 70 countries with 60 languages spoken. And within this year's cohort, there were 100 winners from 43 countries and 27 languages. So it really is open to absolutely everybody. So what are the applicants' benefits? So as mentioned, everyone who applies to RISE from anywhere in the world gains a network of peers and a specially curated offering of opportunities from RISE's partners, including the Trust, from around the globe. The RISE Discord chat is full of exceptional young people looking to connect with one another to come together and solve the world's most pressing problems. As I mentioned earlier, everyone who completes the RISE challenge gains the benefit of project-based learning and human-centered design approaches geared towards social impact. This experience can challenge you, the young people that you work with, the students in your classes, to come up with new ideas and creative ways to solve problems that can take you throughout your life. So, Saoirse, can you share with us perhaps what your experience was with the RISE Global community on Discord when you applied?
Yeah, I mean, the major thing was during the application process was having a group of people who were going through exactly the same thing. Especially because we were the first year, you know, there were so many things to iron out and just to figure out, like, oh my God, am I doing this the right way? And I think, you know, for me, I applied with a project that I felt was, I think it was kind of unconventional in terms of the fact that it was more focused on arts, and you know, and the connection of arts with a social issue, certainly, but still more artistic. And so I had this like really big concern that, you know, this wasn't what they were looking for, that they were looking for, you know, the really science-based projects, the ones that have tangible outcomes. I still actually haven't published any of the stuff that I wrote because of my, it has to be perfect to be published, even 2 years on. But I think being able to talk to people and figuring out what they were doing and what they were interested in, and even just talking about our projects in general and reviewing each other's videos, that was really helpful. But I think once I was selected as a winner, I think it did completely change, because it meant that although the global community is certainly there, you have a smaller global community, and we also all met one another at the summit, as I mentioned. And so I think you really form friendships with a lot of those people. And even though, you know, I've met people from all over the world, and who as I said before, I've discovered that I have a lot in common with, and that has been, I think that really just helps to inform even how I view the planet and how I view my activism. And I think it's a really valuable experience that you don't really get in a lot of other places. So yeah.
Great, thank you. So Saoirse mentioned there the RISE winners benefits. So RISE will select up to 100 winners each year, and they will receive benefits to help them scale the impacts of their projects that Saoirse mentioned. So these benefits could include fully funded residential summit, which we're very much hoping is going to come to visit us at the Living Rainforest next year. Not sure if I can officially say that, but sneak peek. Also, needs-based higher education scholarships, funding for ideas on a competitive basis, access to this amazing global RISE network of winners, starter technology packages, mentorship and career services as well. So what has been sort of so far for you, Saoirse, perhaps the most useful thing that you've received from being a RISE global winner, and what do you sort of think moving forward is going to really help you?
I think definitely the network, as I've talked about a lot, like I think, and the summit itself. So my summit was in South Africa, in July, August of 2021, I think, maybe 2020, I think 2022, too many months. And it was genuinely like so life-changing, like so much fun, and like meeting so many incredible people. As you said before, I think it can be quite isolating being in a lot of these spaces, because for me, when I started my activism, I was the only person in my city really doing this. And in my school, people didn't necessarily care about the things that I cared about, but like this is a group of people who a lot of them do care about it, and a lot of them have very different interests as well, but that's also really important to have that really broad scope. And you can talk to people who are more interested in the STEM side of things about humanities, which I think is really important. And then the other way around, somebody who's more interested in the humanities part can talk to somebody who's interested in STEM. And also just like forming these really great friendships and having a lot of fun. I think, when you're an activist, when you're somebody who's very much working all the time, I started when I was 13. You need a break. And I think it really helped that for me as well, like set aside a couple of weeks during the summer when I could just kind of hang out, but also I think fundamentally one of the best things about it was just seeing South Africa. Obviously I had a very sheltered view of it, going to this program. They put us in a nice hotel and all of that stuff, but I think getting to see, the what people were doing on the ground, for example, to further sustainability in their communities. We visited a township, which is basically an area usually outside of the city, where a lot of people were put by the apartheid regime to kind of allow white people to take over the central spaces, the kind of commercial spaces. So these places are predominantly poorer, and they receive less funding from the government. And we went to the oldest township, and within the oldest township there is a place called the Kialanga, or something along the lines of that. And it was amazing, because you could see firsthand a community initiative that fed local children for free, had their own kind of business going on. They created, I think it was like salsa or something, and they grew their own like tomatoes in this township area, and it was really, really cool to see that, and to realize, like, for me, that has really informed what communities could look like, as I really want to go forward and study politics and sociology. And so experiencing that and seeing, oh, this is a community that is operating in a way that we could all be operating in a way that is both environmentally friendly but also supports everyone, rather than the very bureaucratic kind of systems we have in governments that are very broad and don't really actually reflect the needs of the people. And I think I had never been to Africa before. It was my first visit to the continent at all, and it was genuinely like incredible just to see the different wildlife there. I had a great conversation with a woman who was part of the indigenous groups there, the Khoi and the San people, and she was part of one of those groups. I don't remember which one, and we had a great conversation about language. And there was actually shamrock growing on the grass. And for those of you that don't know, shamrock is a national plant of Ireland, national flower of Ireland, and they're also edible, and they taste like sour apple. And so I picked one up and ate it, and she was like, what? Like, she was like, how did you know that? And I said, it's shamrock. And it turned out that it's also a native plant in South Africa. So you have, and she didn't know it's called shamrock in Ireland. And so you have even that kind of biological connection. And then we talked about language and how our traditional and our indigenous languages, I speak Irish as my second language, how they're so interconnected with the planet, and how, colonization has really meant that a lot of people feel disconnected. And part of that is because we don't have our language. And it's incredible, talking to someone who has grown up in such a different environment from you, quite literally, like on the opposite side of the world. And realizing that you have so much in common and so many connections, and realizing that, it's this realization that the fight for, Indigenous liberation, for example, and for the right of people to speak their native languages is one that is global, is connected. So I think definitely the residential summit was one. And then from that, I think the network has really grown as well with the new winners. But most definitely the year one winners are close, very, very close to my heart. And because I love them all, and I met them all, and yeah.
It sounds like it was an amazing learning experience for you, as well as opportunity to meet other people and learn from other cultures, from the other winners, but also from the places you were visiting as well. So it sounds like that was a really valuable experience for you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Great. So leading on to that, a little bit more about the RISE Residential Summit. It's an opportunity for the winning cohort to come together, connect in person, to share ideas and learn new skills from experts. So as Saoirse just mentioned, the first cohort convened in South Africa, second cohort spent time in London and Oxford, and during the summit, the winners are exposed to various new disciplines. They've got the chance to explore culture, history and art of the host country. In the most recent summit, winners visited 10 Downing Street, which is the Houses of Parliament and the House of the Prime Minister in the UK, and the Crick Institute. They learned about circular economies during climate and sustainability programming days, heard from multiple guests about entrepreneurship, launching ventures, and even had the opportunity to explore astrophysics with experts. So again, some fantastic opportunities for the winning cohort. So where are today's RISE winners? So in addition to the RISE Residential Summit, the RISE Global winners receive a 4-year post-secondary scholarship at any accredited university across the globe, which includes tuition and a living stipend based on need, and those not already covered by financial aid. So many of the RISE Global winners have already enrolled at some of the top institutions in the world, including Yale, Stanford, MIT, and Oxford. And there's also partnerships with many universities in the US and abroad that have a dedicated support team that can guide the winners through the college application process. So Saoirse, you mentioned you're going to university. Is that partly funded by the RISE programme?
Yeah, I'm actually applying at the moment, but I found out that it will be partly funded, yes, recently, which is an incredible opportunity for me, very, very freeing. Because, I think for me, finances is something that's a bit complicated. And so having that sorted out, and it's like such a relief lifted from me. But yeah, I'm applying at the moment. I'm waiting on hearing back from the UK. So that's a bit scary, but we'll see.
Now, fingers crossed for you. I'm sure you'll have no problems getting into any university that you want to with your amazing work. So we've heard a bit more about the benefits. How do you apply? So the RISE Challenge includes a registration process telling RISE about yourself as a student, completing a project that addresses a problem either in the world or your local community, participating in a series of quizzes and games, and providing feedback on other applicants' project through a peer review process. The application platform is video-based, and you'll have the opportunity to submit videos for different sections of the challenge. There is also a paper-based application process if access to technology or the internet is a problem. So if that's something that might be of interest to you, then the paper-based application process is available on the website, which I'll share the link with for you afterwards. So the application timeline, registration for this year's competition is now open. I've got a QR code and a link at the end of the slideshow if you haven't already registered, and I can share that with you as well. But it officially opened on the 28th of September. You have got a few more weeks to complete the rest of your project, so get your quizzes and games done and peer reviews through. So by registering now, you'll get notification when everything is going through from Trust for Sustainable Living. We're going to be supporting you with your application as well. And the closing date for the RISE Challenge is the 17th of January. That's the application deadline you can see here on the timeline. So you have to have your full project completed and submitted within that time. So you can register now, but everything needs to be submitted by the 17th of January. And obviously, the earlier you start, the easier the process will be for you. During June, the finalists that have been selected will be interviewed. There's a final selection process in July and August, and then the winner of this year's applications will be announced in September 2024. So it's about a year-long process. So the eligibility requirements. Sorry, was there a question there?
Yeah, I need a question.
Go ahead, yep.
Can you tell me about the project again? I wasn't here. I didn't understand what was it about.
We're just getting to the project, so hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions in a moment. We haven't got to that section yet, so don't worry. So I'll just go through the eligibility requirements, and then that's my next slide after this one. You've beaten me to it. So eligibility requirements. So anybody can apply, any young people can apply to be part of the RISE process. And I highly recommend that you do that, even if you're not within the age category specifically for the challenge, because as we mentioned, you get access to this amazing network. But specifically for the RISE challenge competition, applicants must be between the ages of 15 and 17 during the application process. So that's dates of birth between the 2nd of July 2006 and the 1st of July 2009. And again, it doesn't matter what country you come from, which background you have from, academic experience, whether you're interested in science, innovation, technology, art, humanities, policy, community organising, any discipline, RISE wants to hear from you. Okay. The RISE challenge videos do need to be submitted in English, but you don't need to submit any TESOL or TEFL scores as part of your application. And they have had students previously that have become winners, that have not spoken any English going into this programme and project, and have been able to develop their language skills while developing their project and while working with the other RISE winners and RISE cohort. So if English is not your first language, that does not need to be a barrier for you. And TSL and RISE can provide support there if needed. Okay, so coming on to the project side of things, let's get a little deeper into those. So projects for RISE should benefit your community using any form of ability, skill, or talent that you have. There are a few steps that you need to highlight when completing your project for the RISE challenge, which includes the research, design, and reflection stages, each of which you can submit via video. So throughout the application, you'll have the opportunity to describe your research and explain how it relates to your passions, demonstrate how you've designed and planned the objectives to accomplish your project outcomes, and reflect on your project journey and any key learnings you've discovered in the process, all through video submissions. So Saoirse, perhaps I wonder if you can share with us your experience of the actual project process.
Yeah, I remember mine was slightly, like I remember that with my project idea, I didn't actually go in initially with a very clear idea of what I would actually cover. So I wasn't exactly sure, what project I would undertake. But then I think I remember thinking about, what's something I'm really passionate about? What do I love to do in my free time? And, one of those things was reading Irish mythology and reading the original texts. And so for me, it was about something that I really loved and how could I apply that to another thing that I was really passionate about and really loved. And so, as I said before, for me, it was mythology. I researched the texts, the original texts, the translations of them, didn't translate them. And then I eventually sat down to rewriting them. And I think for me, I know that it might have changed, but for me, I didn't end up publishing them. They're still in my drive sitting there, because I keep going to rewrite them and perfect them because I'm a perfectionist and it has to be perfect before I share anything. But I think that just goes to show that even if you don't necessarily have like a very solid impact, even if you don't have, I reached 100 people and I changed how they thought about the planet. If you have an idea of what you could potentially do with your project, like maybe someday in the future I will compile a book of what I wrote. I think that's something that's really valuable as well. So you don't necessarily need, again, it might have changed, but from my experience, I don't think you necessarily need to have that solid impact. It's just about having a vision of what you want to achieve in the future. And I think definitely just if you're struggling to choose a project, if you don't know what you want to focus on, just you don't have to change the world. You can just do something that's small. You can do something that, as I said, doesn't necessarily have a solid impact at the moment. As long as it aligns with something that you're deeply passionate about. Because I think that's what the videos and the video application process capture so well. It's what are you passionate about? What do you want to actually, what is it that makes you excited? What is it that makes you even angry? Like, what do you want to change?
Great, thanks, Saoirse. That's really helpful. And I think, as Saoirse mentioned, the passion here is what RISE are hoping to capture. So looking a little bit more in depth at these different stages. So the focus and research section is looking at explaining your project focus and how it links to those passions we've mentioned, describing the research that you've done, and outlining the research impacts on the focus area and the plans that you're making for your project. So how does your project fit into the local or the global or the community context that you're thinking about, and what impact has the research done in shaping the project that you're putting together? Part 2 is the design and planning stage. So this is where you share the goals of your project and what you're hoping to achieve. Explain what you designed and how that meets your project goals, referring to the plan that you've come up with to help you you've created to help you achieve your outcomes, and thinking about any ethical considerations that you might need to take into account as well. If you're doing work that's going to be impacting other people, you need to consider the ethical side as well. And then finally, part 3 is your action and reflecting. So outlining what you did for your project with accompanying evidence, comparing your plans and how the project ran in practice, perhaps highlighting anything that you change for next time, anything that didn't quite work out as you'd planned, and then reflecting on the full project journey. So key learnings, what you do differently if you did it and started again. So we've got a couple of examples, I think, now coming up. So you've heard a little bit about Saoirse's amazing project, but there are other examples as well. So students, so these are global RISE winners from this year's cohort. So we've had students from Kenya who've organised workshops in refugee camps to teach fellow refugees about their sexual health. We've had a student in Egypt who's developed an app integrating AI and psychology to boost self-confidence and self-awareness. Mexican student developed a hydroponic system for the elderly to be able to harvest fruits and vegetables in a rural community. We've had students that have developed solutions to improve access to electricity in their communities, creating browser extensions to make the internet more accessible to people with different impairments. There you go, Saoirse features on that one as well. We had students from Southeast Asia who have created new podcasts talking about mental health and well-being issues in open and accessible ways, founding foundations to help disabled youth and underprivileged students, working to make blood easily available to patients suffering from different blood disorders as well. So a whole range of projects covering arts, humanities, sciences, technologies, all sorts of different fields. So your project can really be anything that's passion related and is important to you with that local or that broader global impact. But any sort of subject. Lots of students have done education-based projects helping to promote awareness of different issues such as climate change within their communities. They've been projects that have been set up within their schools as well and engage the school students around them as part of that community. So there really is no limit to the kind of projects that you could dream up that are going to help to benefit your community. So a few further bits of information. So after completing the RISE challenge, applicants are evaluated and a team selects up to 500 finalists to participate in a RISE finalist day, which takes place online, where you'll have further opportunities to demonstrate your talents. This consists of activities to showcase your motivations, your problem-solving abilities, and teamwork skills in an innovative interview format. So, Saoirse, how did you find this sort of interview or the evaluation stage?
I remember there was 6. Again, this might have changed because this was a long time ago now, which is weird. But I remember there was a group of 6 people, 6 finalists, and we all kind of stuck together for the day. We were like a finalist group. We did lots of different activities and exercises. So one of them I remember was we had to pitch an old invention, an old failed invention, as if we were trying to get investors to invest in it, even though we knew that it obviously didn't work and hadn't continued working since it was invented. And then we also had to present something, maybe a piece of writing or a poem. I don't remember exactly what the parameters were. Again, this was a long time ago. And the interview, I think it sounds scarier than it is. Like it was very laid back, very straightforward, very short, about 15 minutes long maximum. And they just ask you questions about you and your passions and maybe a little bit about your project. But I think most of the focus moves away from the project in the finalist stage. It's mostly about you and what you're interested in, and they're trying to figure out, would Rise benefit you? Are you a good leader? Or how do you fit into a team dynamic? So it's very laid back actually for like what it was. And it didn't have that kind of atmosphere of really intense competition, but that might have changed. I don't know. But yeah, those are my memories of it.
Great, thanks, Saoirse, for sharing those. Okay, so I'm going to stop the presentation there. You've had a lot of information, so we're going to open up now to give you a chance to answer any questions. Up on this slide, we have got a QR code, so if you haven't registered yet and you want to, you can take a little screenshot of that, or you can follow the QR code there. We've got the link to the Rise challenge as well, and I will obviously share this with you via email as well to follow up. So if you haven't already registered, you've got the opportunity to do that now. So I'll just leave that on screen for a moment or two to give anyone the chance to do that. And then I will open up the floor to invite questions. So if you want to either raise your virtual hand or your physical hand, and you're happy to unmute and ask your questions either to Saoirse or myself directly, you'll be welcome you to do that. Or if you'd rather put it in the chat, we can discuss that with you as well. So while we just wrap up, Saoirse, have you got any final words of encouragement or advice for either teachers that are here to encourage their students, or for the students that are with us to take the plunge and go for it?
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, even if, you don't think that you're, like, I did not think I was going to win it. Like, I was like, yeah, no way. But I applied anyway because I was like, well, you never know. And I think that's the thing. Like, even if you don't necessarily have confidence that you will be able to win it, I think it is very much worth going for. And even if you don't end up, becoming a finalist or being selected as a winner, I think the very fact that you have persevered with the application, that you've gotten through to the point where you can kind of click that button and send it off, is such an achievement. And even just deciding to do it in the first place is such an achievement, and setting aside the time to attempt it. So I think definitely, if you are kind of on the fence about applying because you're like, oh, they won't select me, it doesn't, at the end of the day, I think there's so much more you can get out of it than that. Like, obviously that's the end goal, you want to be selected, but it's also not the end of the world if that doesn't happen. And I think, you still are in this community of really, really amazing people. And, also if you're the right age, you can reapply. So, worst comes to worst, you can reapply. And yeah, I think definitely just give it a go and see what happens and have confidence in yourself.
Great, thanks, Saoirse. So I'll open the floor now. If anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask for more information or clarification, or for Saoirse to share any more of her experiences, then please feel free to unmute and let us know. Yep, Hajer, go ahead.
Roger. I was asking if you are giving a qualification of this TSL thing, because I need it from my scholarship in college. I need to apply it to be able to. Sorry, I'm not a native speaker. It's my first time speaking like that.
You're doing wonderfully. I believe that we can probably organise that for you. I don't know if it's something that officially comes through from Rise, but certainly if it's something that will help support your university or your college applications, then we can certainly, if you're applying through the trust, provide a letter to say that you've gone through the process. And obviously if you're selected as a winner or as a finalist, I believe there's some recognition from Rise as well.
Yeah, it's because I'm a senior in high school right now. I'm going to a college after a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'll be able to, but I need it. I really wanna make my CV a really good thing, so I can be able to achieve what I want. Since I wanna go to medicine school. It's an American school, American college in Egypt, and there are also people who are attending to the scholarship, and I'm not sure if I'm able to beat them or be able to succeed. Like they take one from every village. Like I live in a village in Egypt, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, if you've got a strong passion project, something that you feel strongly about, and you apply for the RISE programme, then fingers crossed you could be selected as a winner for next year, in which case the funding hopefully would be helpfully made available for you. But certainly going through the process, I think, Saoirse, whether you agree on this, would be beneficial for you for sure.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
just
thank you.
to develop, your idea if you have one.
Great. Sammy, I saw you had a question that you popped in the chat. Do you want to ask it out loud, or shall I read it out for you?
Yeah, you can read aloud. That's okay. Or shall I?
Go ahead.
Okay. So my question says, is this necessary to work on the project that is suitable only for the native country, or it can be related to any other nation?
As far as I'm aware, I think it can be related to anything. It can be related to wherever you're from or the entire world or wherever. I think it's very broad. And like I said before, you don't necessarily have to say, I've impacted the lives immeasurably of 500 people across the globe. Like I think there is scope for saying this is what I plan to do in the future. So I think definitely, for me, it was obviously very Irish specific, but I know for other people it was much broader. I think it's also important to consider what's achievable for you. If you're aiming from the offset to have a global thing, is that the wisest thing to do? Is it better to start in a smaller area, like your locality, maybe your local city or your village or your area, and then move out from there and have in the future, in 10 years, I want it to go global. But I think that's really up to you and up to what your project idea is. So
yeah, does that help, Sammy?
Thank you so much. Yep.
So I don't think
I got the clarification. I would also, look forward to have one more Zoom meeting with all my students, because
oh, your sound's just dropped out, Sammy. Hopefully you can rejoin us.
After this program, I want my students to participate in such events. So is it possible to conduct one Zoom meeting with the students once they are ready with their ideas, or once they are ready, with their participation?
Yes, absolutely. So TSL is happy to provide as much support as we can for any young people that are applying through the RISE Challenge. So whether Saoirse is able to join us for that, or I might be able to get one of the local young people from your region that might help to inspire them if they're looking at locally based projects. But yes, certainly we can organise a Zoom call with the students to help support them, and that goes for any of the groups. TSL has set up, or I've set up, a Slack group to invite people. So if you've registered on the RISE platform already, and I've got your email address, then I've invited you to that, so I can update that because we're having more people apply all the time. So you can contact directly for any questions. And there are a number of supporting resources that TSL and RISE have got available to help you with things like your project planning and all the different phases of the application process. So I can certainly share those with you as well. But if there's any additional support that you would like in terms of Zoom meetings, either with us or with the local winners, we can certainly facilitate those for you as well.
Great. Thank you so much for the insight.
That's okay. And I think, as Saoirse mentioned, you don't have to complete world domination within this project by the middle of January. Certainly, one of the questions we had earlier in the week was, does everything have to be 100% finished within the time frame? And I think that it's some of these projects are part of a longer term, bigger plan. As Saoirse mentioned, perhaps publishing a book at a later stage. So I think as long as you can show the planning stages, the research and the development, and show some impact within the time, you don't have to have gone and achieved full world domination within that sort of time period. So even if the impacts that you've made so far are small, what RISE are looking for is the planning, the ability, the critical thinking, the systems thinking behind it, rather than, as Saoirse said, necessarily having reached 10,000 people or reached 96 countries or those sorts of things. So it's the sort of finding the innate skills within young people and helping to build those, rather than having someone that's a fully finished project manager that's ready to go. So any other questions that anyone would like to ask? Alex, I know you had a couple of questions. Has that answered everything that you wanted to know? Yeah, he hasn't got his microphone on right now. That's fine. Excellent. Okay. Any other questions, Sabina or Jurata? Is there anything you'd like to ask? You're welcome to type it in the chat.
Hi, Kirsty. Yeah, thank you for the session. It was really insightful. And my question was actually about the topic of the research, and you have just answered it. So
okay.
Yeah, I don't have any more questions.
So yeah, I mean, from the Trust for Sustainable Living side, obviously thinking about sustainability, we would love it if projects had a sustainability link, but they don't need to at all. They can link to science, arts, humanities, geography, community work, technology, AI, computing. There really is the sort of sky's the limit. So I think if you can work with your students to find their passions and what's important to them, that's going to be different for everybody. But I can share, I'll share the link with you to the RISE Global Winners, and you can have a look at who's the previous participants and some of the projects that they've worked on. That might help your students get some ideas. But there's been a whole range of things, from app development to one-on-one mentoring and teaching of younger students, to organising youth events, to empowering women in communities. So a whole range of different sort of options available for the students. And I think, as Saoirse mentioned, it's really important finding out what they're interested in and what their passions are.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Jurata, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thank you for the presentation, first of all.
Welcome.
And I would like to ask, isn't it too late to start the project this year if the deadline is the middle of January?
Saoirse, when did you start yours? Did you start early, or are you one of the later applicants?
I have no recollection, I'm sorry. I think it was, I think I was kind of in the middle, because, as I said, I spent a long time thinking, like, what could I possibly do? So I think definitely, because I think at this point, all they really need is an idea and the proof that they have started to develop that idea. I might be wrong about that. Again, a lot of things have changed over the last 2 years. So I think that's important to remember. I was the first cohort, so a lot of things have changed. But I think, I mean, I think it just depends on what their idea is. But that could potentially be something to aim for as well. You could say, well, let's just postpone until next year, because it is going to happen every year. So ultimately, if people don't feel able to apply this year, they can use the same project. And even, I think, even if you're a finalist and you don't get selected as a winner, you can reapply the next year as well. So it's very much open for reapplication, obviously depending whether or not you fall into the eligibility limits.
Absolutely. So having spoken with members of the RISE team, and their sort of general consensus from participating students in previous years is that most students seem to spend around 20 to 30 hours on the sort of all three stages: the planning stage, the research stage, and then the review stage. So there's still plenty of time. And obviously most of the submissions are via video, so they're relatively quick and easy if you've got the ability to do that, to get the applications in. So most of that time is spent more in the sort of planning and research and development stage. So you've still got, I think it's about 50 or 60 days left, 50 days or so. So if the students have got time to spend, 2 hours or 3 hours a week, that's more than enough time to be working on their project. So, and again, if TSL can support and help that in any way, then we're happy to do that. But no, still plenty of time. And from speaking to some of the other RISE team members, they do get a lot of very last minute submissions where students have worked on the project in the 10 days leading up to the application deadline. So depending on the kind of project that it is, with the shorter deadline that we've got at the moment, it might not be a big global project. It might be a small locally impacted one, or something that can be done that's perhaps more online based, so that students can develop, rather than perhaps a large scale community project involving lots of different stakeholders that have to be organised. But there's definitely still time now to get at least apply and then think about the project as well. So we've got planning documents that can help to guide that as well. But if you've got sort of 20 to 30 hours that either the students can have within school, if you can get it as part of your school clubs or your academic time, or they can do it weekends and evenings, then there's definitely still worth applying. But as Saoirse mentioned, lots of students that have applied in previous years and haven't been selected as finalists reapply the following year, whether you do a different project or continuing their project and changing it with new content, and have been selected as finalists in their second or their third try. So it's definitely worth thinking about the process now and then seeing how it can go. And from next year, hopefully we'll be still continuing the partnership, so we'll be able to take applications from September as soon as the deadline opens, but we can start thinking about it in June, July time before the school holidays.
Thank you.
So, excellent. Any other questions? Haja, did that answer your question on the topic? I think so. Okay, we've got a couple more minutes scheduled, so if anyone has got any other questions, if they think of any questions as soon as we finish the Zoom call, which I always do and think, I wish I'd asked that, then you can always pop those through on email to me. I'll make sure to follow up and send this recording round to everybody that hasn't been able to make it, and I'll share my contact details within that and the various links we've mentioned so that you can register, and also I can let you know about the different supporting resources and the Slack group that we've got to help support your students through it. So if you do have any questions at any point, you're welcome to let me know. If you'd like to organise for a Zoom webinar for your students where I speak to them directly, happy to do that as well. So Sammy, I'll follow up with you on that one. And if anyone watching this as a recording wants to get in contact regarding that as well. And again, we may be able to get another RISE winner, whether it's Saoirse or one of her colleagues, to be able to come and speak to your students potentially as well and share some of their thoughts and impacts. We can do that. But thank you for joining us today, everyone. Thank you so much, Saoirse, for coming and sharing your experiences. Very keen to see how TSL can continue to work with you, because climate activism is one of our areas of interest. And I'd be interested to see if your speech today has inspired the students that are listening to take part. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. I will send this round on catch up for those of you who haven't been able to make it. And again, if you've got any questions, feel free to get in contact. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.